protesting, I guess is the best word, a new neighborhood that was supposed to go up across the road from them, okay? And Jackson has a background in environmental, and he is very smart and very sharp on all things that we're dealing with. So I consider him a resident expert, and he also lives on 315th Street. I don't think he would mind me sharing that. And so he has dealt with many of the same things everyone in this room is dealing with, okay? I have a few other people I want to introduce that have been super important. So the last time my little band of bandits had a meeting at my house, would you call it bandits?
I like that, yeah.
Okay. Jess had reached out to me, and I invited Jess, and I'm going to let Jess introduce herself, and I want to let you know that she also has to protect her interest right now because of her former position, and she'll explain that to you. But the questions she can answer, she'll answer. Questions she cannot answer, please respect that. So
yeah, I'm Jessica Messerschmidt. We moved to Missouri Valley like 6 months ago, and prior to that, I worked for the Corps of Engineers, and I was the project manager on the former Office Site 3, which is the old missile site. So I'm very familiar with that. I'm a geologist by trade, but was the PM on that project for a year and a half or so. And and then it's so funny because people that I worked with were like, wait, so you're gonna move to Missouri Valley now? And I said, yeah, on the other side though, on the non-contained, but it's close to me now too, you know, and I've always been really passionate about this site and about the residents and, you know, trying to help. And now that I live here, you know, I felt like it was kind of serendipitous how it came together, and, you know, just what I do know and what I've done, I know can help people understand what's going on a little bit better out there, and some options that, you know, you know, have to kind of organize more, and so the folks out there can hear you, because it's hard to get through, and I do know that. Yeah.
So our little band of bandits, as I call them, is where I first learned about the RAB, and I learned about that from Jessica. She explained to me what it was. I looked it up. I got more information. So Camp Lejeune, which I think you are all familiar with, which is the toxic spill, they used a RAB, okay? Totally separate from the lawsuit, but it was something they used to communicate better with the Army Corps to help be proactive in how the remediation process would take place. The other important part of the RAB is not only is it a good thing for communication, it gives you a voice, and you have not had a voice since 2012 when this all started. The next person I want to introduce is Rebecca Wilkerson. Rebecca sits at the Board of Supervisors. She has been an advocate for the Board of Supervisors, and I made a request, again, I've made several requests, but I made a request on February 12th for the Board of Supervisors to sit down and meet with me regarding what is going on, information I've received, and I wanted to talk to them at that time about the RAB because they are considered stakeholders in the process, and I was denied. The only person on the board who said that they would do the meeting was Rebecca. Tony Smith did say that he would consider it. Brian Rice, I felt like was a hard no. So we got nowhere. Thursday, they approved their comp plan for the county. I had gone to the Harrison County Planning and Zoning Board and to the Board of Supervisors, and a few other people that are involved to try and get the comp plan to reflect the TCE. They denied me. Why is that important? Because the county has given no voice to the contamination, 0 voice. So Rebecca went to the last Board of Health meeting. She's very involved with Board of Health. I'm gonna let her introduce herself real quick, how long she's been on the board, her thoughts on this, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And maybe Jackson will be here by then.
Rebecca Wilkerson, Board of Supervisors, and I didn't know about the TCE until I had heard about it the year before I got elected. I was elected in 24, started in January 1 of 25, and I had heard about the meeting the year before I was elected, but I didn't understand how serious it was. I wasn't able to go that time, and then I went to the one last year in 25 and realized this is serious. And I was like, why aren't we doing anything? You know, we can't just stick our heads in the sand and pretend it's going to go away, because it's not. But I'm met with brick walls everywhere I go. We did Mary Jo's, the fact that she was speaking out about it, and I brought it up at the Board of Health meeting, and that was why they finally had the meeting in February.
They had the Board of Health had their meeting on January 14th. So they had a meeting at Rebecca's request at the community center, and it was open to the public, but the public was not allowed to ask questions or speak.
I was there.
So you were there. A little frustrating.
Yeah.
Because in the past, the Army Corps has always been very generous and very open about answering questions. So that was at Rebecca's request. So she has been an advocate for everyone here.
The meeting was at my request. I was told that we couldn't, we were told that we couldn't even videotape it, which is actually against the law. They can't keep people from videotaping a public meeting. But, and I have tried to get it on the agenda several times. I did get, was it Mike Ruma?
Mike Ruma.
I got Mike on the agenda because he had sent us an excellent letter. He's very knowledgeable. And I did get him on the agenda, and they kind of listened to him, what he had to say, but they weren't willing to do anything about it. And then I tried to get it on the agenda again after Mary Jo had asked to be on the agenda, and they literally take it off. I'm a supervisor. We have equal, whatever you want to call it now, representation, and I put it on the agenda, and I get the agenda the next morning, and it's not on there. And they said, "Oh, we can take it off." And I asked them, and they just vote, "No, we're not going to talk about it." And then the TCE on the comp plan 2 weeks ago. Maybe it's been 3 weeks now. It was just Brian and I there that day, and they wanted to pass the resolution to adopt the comprehensive plan. And I said, no, we have to put something in here about TCE. We have to do something about it. And so I voted no, and Ryan Reif was the only one there, and he voted yes.
To pass the plan
to
without
pass
the
the comprehensive
TCE.
plan, and I voted no, and so it got voted down. Well, they pulled I don't know what you want to call it, stunt, and we're just going to keep putting it through until we get the answer we want. So they said, well, since Tony wasn't there, we're going to vote on it again. Well, they knew that Tony, just Thursday, they brought it up again, and they passed it. They told me they would put an amendment in the comp plan about the TCE, but you know how that works.
Can I correct you on that? They said they would consider.
Yeah, they said they would consider it, yeah.
What did they want to do instead?
Nothing.
They don't want to do
Not put it
anything.
in plan at all.
They don't want to put it in the plan at all.
Nothing.
Because it doesn't affect them, of course they don't.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. They don't want to do anything about it, and, so that's where it sits. They passed it. I mean, they had to have it passed because they needed to get done what they did Thursday as far as that rezoning, and they needed the comp plan in place in order to be able to justify rezoning or not rezoning, what they did Thursday. So there's a lot of games. What bothers me is we're talking about people's health here. And I went to the Board of Health meeting we had one Wednesday night, and they were concerned about fluoride in the water. They were concerned about raw milk. They want a raw milk statement, they want a fluoride in the water statement, and they want a vaccine statement. And I said, I couldn't help resist. I said, so you're worried about people drinking raw milk, but you're not concerned about the TCE in their water. That didn't go over very well.
What's their reasoning for not wanting to put it in there? They think they need like permission from the state or something? I don't know.
No, they
And-
just,
And,
they don't
and
wanna be
the
held.
Board of Health,
If they have to acknowledge it, then they have to spend money on it, and that's what this is all about, is finances.
it's
So,
about revenue,
Yes.
because if you acknowledge that it's there, then you have to, the bottom line is, as a supervisor, their bottom line is tax revenue. So if you admit it's there, and that people who own property in the area, their values need to be reduced because they can't drink their water.
As they should.
Right. They should be reduced.
But it's also bullshit, because if you go to sell your land, you're not gonna get what you paid for it.
Right.
And I own enough land for each of my kids to build on, and guess what they can't frickin' do right now?
Build on their land.
well, they can't
Exactly.
drill a well.
Can't drill
Right.
well, yeah.
Even if you wanna put your own system in, which is complete bullshit to me.
So, I have been visiting with a group of experts, for the last 9 months. And the group of experts has grown significantly. And so this is a letter I received. I did give a copy of this to the Board of Supervisors on February 12th. And when I say group of experts, it is somebody that's with Purdue University. I have a gentleman that has a water filtration company in Germany, one from Japan. So when I say experts, there's 10 experts that have committed their time to answering questions for me and sharing information, okay? Dear Mary Jo, TCE is a very dangerous contaminant, and it is likely very difficult to remediate this material once it has entered into deep groundwater supplies. The contamination was clearly the result of government activity in essence. It has made your land unlivable and unusable. I wonder if it would be possible to petition the authorities for the people in this region to be relocated, because it's going to take probably 20 years if active efforts are made to restore this land. There are new possibilities for clearing up the sites. Blank is aware of some of these as well as I am. Let me explore these possibilities and get back to you. And then he goes on to talk to the other people in the communication. Some of you have reached out to me and asked me why or how can real estate agents sell property in the area without proper disclosure? And frankly, this has been all about disclosure from day one. I did meet with the developers last Friday, and they have been amazing about sharing information with me. They did share with me the 1987 restoration plan, the blueprint. It's huge, big blueprint. And I do have that at my home. If somebody wants to see it, just call me. You're always welcome to come see everything I have.
Was that plan, did that address contamination in that one?
No,
Not at all.
no contamination was addressed to the developers till after the purchase was made.
In 2012.
Till after the purchase was made, and they had the first couple spec homes up. That is when the Corps came in and started with the testing for the contaminant.
That's when
Okay.
it got added to the
Right.
list of formerly used defense sites,
Right.
basically, that were.
Right.
I would assume that's because they had other sites throughout Nebraska and Iowa that probably popped
So
up top.
this is one of 3 sites.
There's a lot, yeah. in
There's
Nebraska.
more sites, but this is one of 3, okay? And so I wrote a letter on October 21st. I know some of you have heard me talk about it before, so I will not read it again. It's pretty lengthy. And it was sent to the Iowa Real Estate Commission, the Nebraska Real Estate Commission, the Iowa Board of Realtors, which is the trade organization, the Nebraska Board of Realtors, which is the trade organization, and the Southwest Iowa Board of Realtors, which is the trade organization. In that letter, I sent an area map, which was produced by the Army Corps. I sent some testimonials, and I also sent property disclosures that did not disclose any contamination in the environment, in the neighborhood, or in the water. So that letter was sent to those entities on October 21st. I received a response March 9th. So just last week. And it's, they said regarding Cottonwood Hill subdivision, I did not make it specific to Cottonwood Hill subdivision. I made it specific to the contamination site, just so you're all aware. Dear Marilyn, the offices of the Iowa Real Estate Commission received and reviewed your written complaint based solely upon the information you provided. Your complaint does not fall within the Commission's investigatory jurisdiction. All written complaints received by the Commission shall be initially screened by the Commission's administrator or designated staff to determine whether the allegations of the complaint fall within the Commission's investigatory jurisdiction, and whether the facts presented, if true, could constitute a basis for disciplinary action against a licensee. Complaints which are clearly outside the Commission's jurisdiction, which clearly do not allege facts upon which the disciplinary action would be based, or which are frivolous, may be closed by the Commission administrator or may be referred by the Commission administrator to the Commission for closure at the next scheduled Commission meeting. If this office, acting within its limited authority, is unable to assist you, this does not prohibit nor should it discourage you in any way from seeking any legal remedies available to you. In many instances, the appropriate court of law is the only authority capable of rendering a legal decision to resolve the problem. If you have additional information that indicates a possible license law or rule violation by real estate licensee, you may forward copies to this office for additional review. So they have broken several disclosure laws. My background is real estate. I am a currently inactive but licensed broker in Iowa and Nebraska. In addition, I have been instructing real estate courses based on law, ethics, contamination disclosures across Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota. And I've been doing that since 2014. So laws were broken. They don't obviously want to get into the muck with the licensees for disclosure. No, I am not done with this. If anybody here knows me very well, they know that they'll probably be hearing from me in the near future. So, but I wanted to share that with you. In addition, I did receive this yesterday from the developers of Cottonwood Hills because they reached out in 2024 to the Iowa DNR to find out if they could have wells or do a community well or hook onto somebody else's well. And this is the response they got. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Well, maybe I will. I don't know. We'll see how. It says, Dear developer, I'll use that name. Regarding Offutt Air Force Atlas D Missile Site 3, contaminated sites database ID number 639. And this is in response to an inquiry regarding new drinking wells. The Iowa Department of Natural Resources, DNR, has received 2 letters of inquiry and on May 14th and 17th regarding the prohibiting on drilling new drinking water wells on certain parcels of Cottonwood Hills subdivision near Missouri Valley, Iowa. The area is undergoing long-term investigation and remediation of chlorinated volatile organic compounds in groundwater related to the previous site used by the United States Air Force. The site is being remediated by the United States Army Corps of Corps of Engineer. In 2018, the DNR water supply and contaminated staff issued a letter along with a map showing the areas where private drinking water wells would not be approved given what was known at the time. So I'm gonna stop there because since 2018, they have not, I've not been able to find a moratorium, just so you know, by the county, state, or federal government. Only, it's a case-by-case basis on drilling wells. This is a very serious topic for every one of you. Because when a well is drilled, what it does is it pulls the TCE a little further through the aquifer, which I know some of you are aware of.
It can.
See, and I was told, because I was gonna look at having my daughter build on the property, and I went to Logan, Building and Zoning, and they told me no, there was a moratorium on drilling any wells around the area.
So,
And this was a few years, jeepers, this was, I don't know.
did you
4 or
talk to
5
Matt
years?
Pitt?
I could have, I'm not
Okay.
sure.
So I do have some information I can share with you later, that I do have it in black and white. There's been no formal moratorium. It is a case-by-case thing. The only real moratorium that was done in Cottonwood Hills, but they've still been able to sell lots since 2018. Wendy lives there, she'll tell you houses have gone up since 2018, so it is a case-by-case basis, okay?
There's also varying areas where you can drill a well. There's several different aquifers out here, and so I know the state, and that's the thing, people would call the Corps, and you may have talked to me, you know, at some point if you wanted to drill a well, because people would call us, and we'd have to direct them to the state, because technically that's a state issue. We can't tell you whether or not, the feds won't tell you whether or not you can drill a well. The state mandates that, but you know, I've talked to them a lot too, and you know, they go in on the map, and there's certain areas where the contamination is not moving in that area, so you can drill a well, and maybe they're gonna have you drill deeper than you normally would, or maybe they're gonna have you do a more shallow one, and they're gonna tell you exactly how to do it, what you have to grout it with, how long your screen is, and all of that, because there's really specific details that you have to use when you are going through aquifers that may have contamination.
And I was told the first and second have contamination, and that's why they didn't wanna drill, because they didn't want you to hit
Drag
the
it
first
down.
or second and drag it down to the third.
Yeah, the state will usually say that's the reason, anywhere in the area, and it really is playing it safe, because, and I would say the same thing, because the more fractures and the more we dig into the earth, the more we're causing the plume to expand, and so it's really important that we're not pumping, you know, while it's still in remediation, it's really important to keep the conditions as consistent as possible, if that makes sense.
So what happens, where I live, we have the worst water. What if my well runs dry?
So it's gonna be my next question.
They're just
too.
gonna tell us tough luck?
Do you have a
Sorry
gap
for you.
treatment system?
Yeah.
Okay, you have a treatment system?
Yes.
Do you know how deep your well is? Probably, it's
Yeah.
probably over 200 feet. Well, the Dakota aquifer, we got bigger problems if it goes dry, first of all. Second of all, the government will bring you bottled water and massive things of water. They will, the
To
one thing that
shower,
they will do,
laundry.
yeah, is provide clean water. That's what they do.
Then
You know,
it's not realistic.
There's a lot of
I
places in
understand where you're
Arizona
coming
where
from.
people, they can't drink their water, they can't bathe in their water, they get delivered, they put massive tanks in these
You'll have a nice
areas.
1,000-gallon tank sitting out in your front yard.
And you can bathe every other day and do laundry once a month.
Yeah.
No, you'd be surprised what they have. I mean, the water source is probably better than your well in a lot of cases. And they're trying to figure out how to pump into city water out there. The thing
No,
is,
that is off the board. The DNR has been very clear with me that they will not be doing any rural water out there.
And I had a question about that. Why is that?
Because of the soil type out there is what they told me.
there's a lot of details with that, because the Corps will also, the Corps most always will do what the state wants. You know, if the state sets a standard, they're gonna follow that to the best of their ability. However, if there's a viable source of water, they will pump into city regardless of if the state is completely on board. However, I know the reason up until now that we keep running up against too is it's too far, and to find like a power source and some way to pump an adequate amount. So what they really need to do is build a whole new treatment system, or, which, the thing about the RAB and why I encourage it is that, you know, folks get to be involved in more of the decision making. And right now, where they're at in the process at the Corps is where they're choosing the remediation. So they've done all these pilot studies, they know what works out there, and the RAB gets to be involved. Y'all get to review the documents before they go final. I mean, there's RABs out in northern Michigan that the RAB runs the Corps out there. Like, no one wants to go to those RABs because, you know, because there's a lot of people that live out there. And so this is an opportunity to be more involved in those decisions, because there's not just one solution. There's a lot of different ways this could go, and I think it's gonna have to be several different remediations happening at once. And it's gonna take the community, I think, putting more pressure, because the thing about former Office Site 3 is it's a top 10 site in the FUDS program, which means it gets approved for money first.
So this is what Scott Sawyer shared with me, because
Who took
been in
over my
community,
job
he
when
took
I
over
left.
her
And
job.
and he knows I've met with you and I've talked
Yeah.
to him about this.
So we have spoken frequently about this. And Scott has sent me, if you got an email from me, you received probably all this information. I'm just gonna real quick explain what a RAB is via Chapter 3, okay? Establishing and maintaining restoration advisory boards. The introduction. The chapter presents the procedures for establishing and maintaining RABs at properties during a response action. The contents of this chapter are presented in accordance with 32 CFR Part 202, the RAB rule, and the RAB rule handbook published by at the time this was written, it says DOD, Department of Defense. It's now the Department of War. March 2007. I do have an updated copy of the handbook for February of 2026. The RAB rule handbook was developed by the Department of War according to the RAB rule and serves as a user-friendly guide for individual RABs. It is available, and they've got the link you can link to on here. The procedures presented in this chapter apply to all headquarter USACE elements, and all USACE commands have responsibility for establishing and maintaining RABs for response actions. These procedures apply to the PRP projects only in those rare instances when, based on formal PRP agreement, USACE serves as the lead for execution of response and agrees to establish and maintain a RAB. So Scott did tell me that this area does qualify for a RAB. In such instances, the PM district, which would be Scott, will work and agrees to establish and maintain a RAB. In such an instance, the PM district will work closely with the Office of Counsel to ensure that no project documentation subject to legal privileges is inappropriately released. And for additional information, it shares another piece of the law. During the MMRP, which is the Military Munitions Response Program removal project, the RAB process is initiated when the EECA is initiated, provided any one of the criteria listed in paragraph 3-3A exist, and that would be when there is no existing RAB near the MMRP or the HTRW. The HTRW is the hazardous toxic radioactive waste site.
And that's what we
Okay.
are. So Office Site 3 is an HTRW site, not an MMRP site, because it didn't have explosive or bombs that
So-
were made there, that's the difference.
So, the PM district will determine that at least one of the criteria listed in the paragraph 3-3A exists. Once the requirement has been met, various community involvement techniques should be used to determine whether or not the RAB should be formed. The minimum steps that must be followed are as follows. I'm just going to read the one that, was on there. Review correspondence files to determine what community comments have been received regarding the project or other environmental issues related to the community. So we very easily qualify for a RAB. So like Jessica said, the RAB has a voice. So what is a RAB? And I'm just gonna read this out of the handbook so you're aware. Since 1994, restoration advisory boards, RABs, have served as valuable forums for sharing information and uniting War Department personnel, stakeholders. The stakeholders are people directly affected. The Board of Supervisors would be considered stakeholder, the county, okay? The state, and the city of Missouri Valley is also considered a stakeholder.
Landowners, you're each, you
Yeah.
know,
I was gonna say,
stakeholders.
that us that live along Euclid
Yeah.
Creek, I would hope.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all the
our
landowners,
stakeholders.
Yep, our stakeholders.
And community members in a common purpose to support cleanup. By increasing communication, collaboration, and transparency among the stakeholders involved in the Defense Environmental Restoration Program, active RABs can achieve positive outcome. RAB members work together to facilitate and integrate and response installation cleanup strategy. They also bring together department personnel, community members, and other stakeholders to share knowledge and feedback regarding an installation's environmental restoration, referred to as a cleanup in this document. Milestones, timeframes, challenges, and goals, we wish gold. Effective RABs are comprised of a diverse group of stakeholders ranging from the Department of War representatives and technical experts to local community members, government agency personnel, regulatory partners, and tribal community members, and indigenous people who collectively identify issues, engage in meaningful discussions, and exchange information throughout the cleanup process. Stakeholders with different technical, environmental, cultural, and historical and organizational backgrounds bring in a range of experience and expertise. And I'm not going to keep reading that paragraph, but what I am going to kind of give you an idea what your part is here. So, public participants. Members of the public may attend RAB meetings to ask questions, share suggestions, and raise concerns. Note that the public participation in a RAB meeting is not required by the RAB rule, but it is encouraged to ensure comprehensive representation of community concerns. Observe rules and operating procedures when attending RAB meetings. Appear before or file statements with RAB. Make comments and ask questions during portions of RAB meetings in which the public comments are solicited. Provide feedback in a constructive manner. Provide and exchange knowledge, information, and perspective. Review, evaluate, and comment on specific cleanup documents and other materials. So that's kind of what your role would be. I did ask Scott where we are in the process, okay? Because I think that's super important for you to know and understand. So they are at the end of the feasibility study. And the portion they are at now is, apparently there is a polychloride that's coming up through, it's like a byproduct of the TCE.
Polybiphenol, the PCBs.
No, it's something
Or what are you
different than the
talking
PCBs. It's the gas that is created by the TCE.
Okay, the vapor intrusion.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so there is gas coming up, they believe, so they're running a test right now that is, there's a list of byproducts. If you reach out to me, I will get you a list of the byproducts so you can test your water for them, okay? So there is a gas that comes up, and they have now started, there's 5 homes that they are going to or have already started testing at the foundation to see if the gas is going into people's homes. The way I understood it, and I'll repeat, the way I understood it is they are looking to see if something like a radon mitigation system or something like that would work in people's homes to help omit the gas from your home.
Is it only testing on the cottonwoods?
No. So, and I'll show you some maps so you can get an idea.
Involved in that.
So, they've already selected the homes.
I'm crazy, that floors me that they wouldn't have picked mine.
And so now, my understanding is that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, now that is the last part of the feasibility study, and once they get through that piece of testing, then they will be ready for the remediation. So it is so important now for this RAB to be formed now, because without that, the Corps is just going to do what they feel like is best. Okay? And I know some of you have had frustrations with that.
Yeah.
And I am not going to sit here and promise that the RAB is going to be the end-all be-all. There are some other alternatives I am currently working on for solutions. And you can reach out to me individually, because I, like I said, have had many groups of experts reach out to me with different scenarios. But I think the RAB is a great way to communicate with the Corps. It's better than one annual meeting every year, right?
Where they say the same thing.
Right, they did change the PowerPoint, I will let you know that. They did change the PowerPoint. So, and Scott Sawyer has been fantastic. Anytime I've had a question about answering the question, I have his contact information. Matt Graish at the Iowa DNR has been, he's a geologist like Jessica. He has been fantastic about answering information. On a county level, I'm going to be very blunt, I have been very frustrated. So, we really need some buy-in from the county, and that's why Rebecca being here today, and she did tell me she would sit on the RAB board, is so important, because this is not just a federal or a state problem. This, as you know, is a local problem. So, I have so much information I've collected, and I have a lot of information from the developers too, and I receive new information, believe it or not, my husband can tell you on a daily basis.
Do you know how they picked the 5 houses?
I do not,
Because I know with yours, you're saying.
I do not know how they,
Was this for the sample, or for the testing,
for the testing for the feasibility study for the gas.
for the vapor intrusion? So they take like these canisters, it's not, and actually, and something I've been looking into to maybe help the community is a lot of these things you can order yourself. You can do these tests yourself, and I think it might, and I've reached out to some folks in private industry just to see like how much does this stuff cost, because it might be something worth, especially for the RAB or for a group of us, you know, to go in on some equipment so that we can do our own third-party testing as well. It's just another way for you to see a result that hasn't been through multiple, you know, labs, which, you know, the DoD certified labs are great, but, you know, numbers are numbers, and humans are fallible, and testing happens at one moment, right? So the more results you can get to advocate for yourself, you know, the better. But yeah, they take these little Suma canisters, and they usually, what they do is they do they'll probably do a sub-floor or a sub-slab, so they drill a tiny little hole into the sub-slab, and they take an air sample into this canister, and so it's completely contained in there. And that way they're able to see what type of contamination may be rising into the ambient air from the soil. Because, just like with radon around here, and everything else, it will seep up. You can have the best foundation in the world, but there's tiny little ways, where there's a will, there's a way. And so they'll see what the levels. Now, vapor intrusion has been something that, the Corps and, environmental folks, really in the last 10 years, we've really started to understand it. Which is yeah, that sucks. We didn't know it was also in the air. Well, yeah, just like mold, asbestos, all of this stuff is also airborne, and now that we know better, we have to do better. And so they have to test for that, because they can't say, this remediation is for sure gonna work if they haven't tested it on air yet. A lot of times if they remediate the groundwater and the soil, everything else is gonna follow, right? If that's cleaned, it's not gonna be seeping up. And most of this stuff, just like radon, once it hits the air, it, breaks down, basically.
Dissipates.
Yeah.
So is it one house might have radon, the one next to it might not?
Usually
so is
no.
there a chance that these 5 won't have
Yeah.
it, but others
No.
could?
Definitely
That's why I
not.
was asking, how are they picking the 5?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, that'd be a
if
question
you're
for
ground
Scott
zero,
Sawyer.
Why isn't her house
Yeah.
being tested for
Yeah.
something like that?
Right. The thing is that they're all gonna have similar, as far as the ambient air goes, and in Cottonwood Hills proper, and in, I don't know exactly where you live, but in the hot spots, there was 3 launch and service buildings, so, where the missiles were, those 3 missile sites are the hot spots, that's where,
Well, they're not the hot spots anymore, though.
Mm-mm.
And so, my understanding, and if you look at the maps, Cottonwood Hills, because water goes downhill,
right,
Cottonwood Hills, it is where they're doing the majority of the testing, and that's where my concerns have been, because the TCE has moved out of Cottonwood Hills. It's
Flowed
very
down into the
clear.
creek.
Mm-hmm.
It's moved out of Cottonwood Hills. Other people now have
it hasn't moved out of
contamination.
Cottonwood Hills.
It's still there,
So
but
what
it's not
happens is that
to
it's
the,
shallow. It's shallow. None of your wells are drilled above 50 feet in Cottonwood Hills. On the map, it is the hot spot of the plume, and I say that because of the contamination.
yeah, I
plume.
don't know, anyway. So, the red wells are outside of Cottonwood Hills. Most of the testing they're doing is in Cottonwood Hills, and that's why forming this RAB and giving you a voice if you live outside of Cottonwood Hills is very important, because just the law of averages, if they take the numbers that they're testing with in Cottonwood Hills, and that's what they present for a remediation plan, it does nobody down the road with a red well any good, correct?
Right.
That's
They don't
common
wanna pull
sense.
a thread because
And-
it'll all come
right.
unraveled.
And so,
Well, if they treat the source, the thing is, the source is what's feeding it. So they have to treat the source, and
Right.
usually then you treat the rebound, and you have to treat it from all angles. So you're gonna go all the way out to, the furthest, and then you're gonna be treating it there, but you're gonna be treating it aggressively in the source areas.
so,
And also, I'm just gonna say, and I'm sorry, my kids are upstairs, and one thing I did want a disclaimer, I did work for the Corps. I'm a groundwater and soil expert. I know this site in my sleep. However, I know that there has been a lot of misinformation that I've heard already, which is why I have distanced myself a bit. Because as a professional and what I do for a living, it's important for me to maintain that and to also not be giving out misinformation. So I think what I will act as is probably a consultant. I also live right outside of the city limits. I live outside of city limits. So, and I want to help as much as I can, so I guess I just want to make that I'm not involved in all the things that are being said to the community. I want to be a resource really badly. I want to help you guys. I want to help my family and my community. This shit keeps me up at night.
We
Okay.
appreciate you.
Yeah, and I'm waiting. Technically, I'm supposed to have been, I'm talking to the camera. I'm supposed to have been gone for 2 years. I see you say. Just, for conflict of interest purposes.
Right.
But I've been very transparent. Everyone knows I was moving here. No one thought that was a surprise.
yeah, and she still is in conversations with the Corps.
I'm still friends with a lot of those folks, which is also good,
Yeah.
cause I have a lot of resources, you know?
So that's the
Um,
angle she's coming at it with.
And there's a lot of good people there, you know, I mean, big government, yeah, I don't know, I quit because I was tired of doing this.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that want
So the
to
DNR
fight for these sites.
has, a little different perspective on some of this, just going to say that, and obviously the county does too. So, the RAB works directly with the Corps, okay? And, I have a sign up here, I have several people that reached out to me that couldn't come today, that want to sit on this board. And, two of the names I put on there already because they said, make sure I'm on there, and I said I definitely will. And so, if you feel like you have interest in sitting on this board, I know Jackson Summers, his name's not on there, again, he was ill today. He definitely wants to be on the board, and so the Corps did tell me it's 6 to 20 individuals is what they put on there, and, I know we easily have 6, okay? I will probably be reaching out to some of you individually about, a few questions I know that you've brought to my attention, but just in the essence of time here, it's about 11 o'clock, I'm gonna go ahead and pass this around. And you can go ahead and sign up if you wanna sit on this, and then I did wanna share, I'll start over here. I did wanna share, one of the experts that reached out to me and spoke with me is Dr. Natasha Winters. She, this is her book, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. I just got it, I've started reading it. We do have several individuals in the area that do have cancer. There's a lot of similarities in the cancers. We have one street where there are 7 individuals on that street that have all the same type of cancer. So we have been able to find patterns with the cancer. Obviously that has nothing to do with the remediation, but it is something that we do need to talk about, okay? The developers and people that have purchased land out there that are unable to develop their land have expressed that they would like to figure out a way that they can either sell their land or be compensated for their land or any damages that they've incurred. And so I do have some information on that. And again, experts who have reached out to me, I got the ball rolling and the experts have continued to come to me, which is refreshing instead of me having to track them down, okay? Any other questions?
Do we have any idea, what remediation, how they're gonna do this?
Scott
What
said-
method they're gonna try?
Scott said they have, a few different options on the table. It sounds like, the fracking, I think they are going to stop the fracking, is my understanding, but I do not know that for a fact, okay?
Is that because it
I think
Was
so, but nobody's
spreading its
been,
plume instead of
nobody's been blunt, transparent about everything.
everybody's
And
lawyer speaking?
Right.
I
And-
could be, if you want me, I mean, I've
So-
told, you know,
But
I
you've
think-
been gone for a while, and I'm just going by the information that Scott shared with me last week.
yeah, I wrote the
And-
feasibility study. And everything's been at a pause because of funding. So you will come up against that. A lot of people won't have answers for you right now because, as you may imagine, environmental problems are not the number 1, number 2, number up to 12 priority currently in the federal government. And so a lot of money has been taken, and we don't call it fracking either.
Well, Scott has referred to it to me as fracking.
Can you explain that, like,
Yeah.
what, for the blonde in the room, what you mean by that?
Yeah, about what fracking is.
Yes. I mean, I
Well,
think I know, but like when.
Yeah, it's like horizontal drilling,
Okay.
essentially. Instead of going vertically, they go horizontal.
Okay,
So a lot of times you'll hear it as far as oil and petroleum and resources go, because like in shales where oil is, they have to go horizontal because that's how the rock plains move. They're like in sheets. And so out here, we have really complex geology, and there's all these really tight clays up top, and then there's like a sandy section, and then there's a really thick bedrock, and in between there's all these different seams. And so the TCE likes to be in areas where the water moves quicker. You know, it's gonna move with water, so it's gonna always kind of take the path of least resistance.
In the less soil, basically.
Yeah, so like in
That's why they
that
can't
clay,
do the
it gets
community
really
well.
stuck up there in that clay in that top 50 feet or so. But right below it, there's sand, and that's where a lot of our wells are drilled out here, because you want your well in a sandy area where the water's flowing. And if the water's flowing, your TCE is gonna be flowing with that, you know? So with the recent injections, they go down vertically. Why it's not fracking is because, and Scott Sawyer, bless his heart, he's not a geologist, he's actually not a scientist at all, but he's a great guy and he will advocate for you through and through. But they go down vertically and then they inject these tiny, almost microscopic pieces of iron in like a slurry. You know, they make a slurry with iron and they inject it down. And what it does is that once it gets to those sand layers, it shoots out. And that's what we want it to do. We want the iron to go out into the water, because the iron, which actually attracts bugs, I always just call them bugs, but they're tiny microbes. And those bugs we like because they eat the TCE. They break it down. So if you can make it an iron-rich environment where bugs can live and make babies and poop and all of those good things, that's good, because they literally will break down the TCE to DCE, which you'll see in your results, which you're like, oh, that's still something. But we want to see that because that means it's breaking down, and then it goes to vinyl chloride. So a lot of times you'll see VC, you'll see DCE, you'll see TCE. So fracking is where they intentionally go in horizontally. We go down, and I say we, the Corps, remediation in general, they inject the iron at really high pressures. What happened out there with the iron is it worked in some areas and it didn't work in others. In that intermediate zone, by the time it got down there, it started to glum up. You know, you can imagine when you make like a slurry, and if it's not fluid enough and not fast enough, it'll get kind of like glunky in there, you know, which is a technical term, the glunk. And it gets stuck. So then they were having to kind of pump it out. What we did notice is that it was degrading the TCE. That's a good thing. So I think they'll probably end up doing some of that. And then what I've really been interested in, and what is a possibility, and maybe the RAB can help talk about this as well, is using thermal out there, which is basically where they heat up the ground to like over 200.
So they had tried some of that, is my understanding.
No, we haven't done any thermal out there. It's always been deemed too expensive, and it is really expensive. That's okay. There's still places that get it approved because it works really well. But things like that, you know, the government's also always gonna look for, you know, the best price for the best work, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of different remediations that work, which is why this is a cool time to be involved, because in the feasibility study is when they say, this is what we're gonna do. And then the next document, which is signed, you know, by headquarters, is the ROD, the Record of Decision. And that says, we're doing this, we're doing thermal, we're doing ZVI injections, stamped, sealed, delivered, contracted out. And so,
So what experiments are you saying that they did? Because Scott told me they had 3 that they had tried, and you're saying that there hasn't been 3, so I guess I wanna know.
oh no, I didn't say that. I just said they haven't done thermal.
Okay, my understanding was they had. So what have they did, just so we know?
Well, it sounds like you have different information, and I don't want to
I just wanna know
say
what you
things as
know,
facts.
what you
because,
know they did for experiments, I guess.
So what they've done to date is the ZVI injections. We did something called e-redox, which is where they basically put probes in the soil in the shallow zone. You guys, if you live out there, you've seen those tests. And that worked okay. It worked
What was in the
okay.
shipping containers?
Um,
I was wondering that too.
maybe
Like
water?
Far Up our road.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, was that when they
It was like-
removed all the soil, when they excavated a bunch under the?
No, they didn't excavate any,
Yeah.
they brought these huge shipping containers out that had some type of a
Oh, that was the
plastic-
ZVI probably, that was
There were like
the
3 or
iron
4 of them
injections.
for months.
Yeah.
If you go quote unquote off-roading out there,
Yeah,
there's a little hidden area with a bunch of roped off things.
Oh, it's in the lower back,
Yes.
yes.
oh, is it?
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Back
Well,
off
they
the
put-
neighborhood
And you
there?
go down there and you're looking, you're like, oh, this is going on.
Yeah, what's, just like different,
I don't live out there, but
Yeah.
we frequently go out.
and I didn't go, I've
Yeah,
only been
so-
out a couple times too, most of my work
It's
was from
interesting.
behind the desk.
Just in the last 2 years too,
Yeah.
we were told they put out, they drilled like 28 new, like,
Wells.
test ports.
Oh, test wells?
Yes, and one of them was by where the missile silo was, which is right there,
Mm-hmm,
next to us.
yeah, it's right next to you.
Yeah, it's a shared property line.
Were they
with
doing
our-
iron injections there?
I have no idea, but they
You
put
would've known
probably
if they
3
were.
or 4
Yeah,
of them there. They put more down, I think west, out in
Yeah.
some cornfields, and probably some in yours.
yeah,
They put a lot in our field.
that was probably them
Yeah.
testing the
'Cause they were
iron.
trying to
So
get
they
it done
they
before-
did the iron test, what other test have they did?
So the e-redox is like the probes where they put those all around, they basically, turn on a high electrical current.
Okay,
And,
That's it, too.
yeah, so
Yeah.
they do that, and they've done excavation, which is, you know, what it means, that's a remediation where they dig up areas, they've done that. That was before I came to the
Okay.
Corps. And they've, I think those are the only ones I know of. Yeah.
so the electric current, which my
Because we
understanding
just did
was
the pilot studies. Oh, and so technically the TICRA, which is the time critical removal action, is when they installed your GAC systems. So that's technically a removal action. They have to, you know, because just like if they were bringing in water or whatever. So that was done, so they call that a TICRA. And I think when they excavated that, that big amount, I don't remember when we were talking about that, from the road, around the road.
the PCPs.
Yeah, back in 2014 or something.
What do they do with that?
They
Like,
have
if
to
it's
take it to
contaminated?
a hazardous waste landfill. Yeah,
Oh, boy.
it's like it's RCRA, it's under RCRA, which is, basically, yeah, you have to take it to a facility. I think the closest one around here, it's in Nebraska somewhere, but it's a hazardous toxic.
Right out in Sandhill.
Yeah, it's out west.
Where the
Boyd
water,
County.
water aquifer is out there.
Yeah,
So my understanding is with the PCBs, they had to be incinerated. And then my understanding is they're buried underneath the road. They took that soil and put it underneath the road out there at Cottonwood Hills.
Oh, fabulous.
Because that could never go anywhere.
Well, we incinerated it. My understanding
know.
is that's how they get rid of it. So, that was my understanding of what happened to it from both the developers and the Corps. So,
and that was before I was here, so, and I'm not gonna, you know, we're all on the same team, but I know, and Mary Jo and I have had a lot of back and forth about information. She's been given an information I have, and, you know, I think the important thing is usually the actual truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? Of like what actually happened, why it happened in that moment. Cause we only know things that were like passed down to me, information reports that I read, you know, and then whoever, you know, the state or whatnot. And so but what I have noticed since I've lived out here is there's a lot of misinformation that's gonna be really harmful in us getting any help. And that's what I fear, because the government will listen, but they will not listen if you come with hearsay, gossip, things that are not true. It's important to be organized professionally and to know the science and to know your facts,
Yeah,
because you get about one chance to present the government with,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And like, I say that in the best way, but there's a lot of things on the agenda. And so it's really important that we make sure we're focusing on facts.
yep.
So what kind of misinformation are we hearing?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that.
Just that it's moving up gradient, that the contamination is moving uphill, things like that.
You can't do that.
I was gonna say, gravity quit working?
Right. Things like that. You know, I sent a long letter to, And I don't even know a lot of the people that work for the city, but apparently I've ruffled some feathers, I didn't mean to. But, you know, when someone released the
Keep ruffling
TCE
the
results, you know, they released the TCE results for the town recently. And I keep an eye on all that stuff. And, you know, she had wrote that it was,
I think that was one of the
0.5
city clerks.
milligrams
Yeah.
per liter. Which equates to like 5,000 of TCE, which is deadly. And it's not, it's 0.005. So, and those things might seem simple, but to anyone at home that Googles, what does this mean for my water?
Yeah.
And then they put in a complaint, or then maybe someone from the whatever sees it. And so I did write a long letter just explaining, because it is common. I don't know that either. I have to look up conversions. I don't know what micrograms to milligrams is. But if you're writing this for the city, for the residents, you know, and I suggested that maybe she do a fact sheet on TCE, you know, and offer to maybe help, just so people can know like the basics. What is this? How is it measured? Not like, you know, this is your level. Nobody knows what that means, because your body's gonna process TCE differently than mine does.
So
You
this,
know?
so this is the, last map I received from the Army Corps. And Cottonwood Hills is right here, so it is southeast. And naturally, it would start moving probably south of town, because water has a tendency to flow south. But you can see the red wells, and this is from the Corps. The red wells have started moving northwest. The explanation that was given to me is it's moving northwest because it's being pulled through the aquifer by the amount of well drilling that is in that area. So,
And I wouldn't agree with that.
I was
that's,
gonna say,
this
just
is,
naturally, wouldn't it flow down Euclid
It's
Creek
flowing
like
down.
any other drainage runoff?
this,
It's not
this
always
is
south or north.
the
Yeah,
Corps
This
map.
flows.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the Corps map.
Well,
This
It's
is not
important to
mine.
kind of
interpret it right, though, is the
north-ish,
thing,
Yeah.
But
because
it's flowing
this
towards
is
the boiler.
also 3D.
Yes.
You're looking at a
So-
flat, you're not looking at the
Except the
subsurface.
aquifers are below the
And
boiler.
then this is
They're not
the,
gonna flow in, they're below.
Right.
And when you set up
Yeah.
a siphon effect, you can move water any direction you wanna move it, uphill, downhill, sideways,
That's
backwards,
true.
depending on the amount of siphon effect.
It would
Right.
have to be a lot of pressure to be
Well,
moving it.
it could be a lot of.
Yeah.
And the clay is so tight, it's moving very,
Mhm.
very, very
I can only go
slow.
by the information the Corps gives me.
I would just say,
And the DNR, did give me information, I do have an email, that the TCE is moving northwest. The DNR also provided me with an email, which I have with me today. The Corps has been reporting there's 289 contaminated acres. And I can read the email to you, but this is the map that was sent with the email of proposed areas that probably should check for, you know, keep abreast of the situation. And they did state 2,500 to 3,000 acres have been affected by this. That is very different from the 289.
Have they, so at that one meeting, we all filled out a form as to what health issues we
Right.
have had,
I
and
got that with me today.
has anything come of that?
No, because the Corps does not do anything with that information. The Corps only handles remediation. That
They
is
do
it.
risk assessments on humans and animals.
That is not what the Corps has shared with me, which I have in black and white, okay?
It's public information,
So,
Marilyn. The risk assessment, it's upstairs. It's just a risk assessment. So they
Right.
do a risk assessment on any site, and it's a human, health, and environment. So the FUDS program, the Corps, the goal of the remediation is to protect human health and the environment. You would think human health, okay, if people are getting cancer, isn't that relevant? And our risk assessor, you know, we went down a huge rabbit hole together, took it all the way up to the top, like this does not make any sense. And so we do test human, the effects of TCE on the human body.
have any of you been tested?
No, they
for
don't
TCE?
test humans. So a risk assessment, they're not gonna test you directly. Risk assessments, you can do risk assessments without taking your blood, right? We know humans, but like for the cows, like we came up, like we wanted to test the cows. seems relevant, right? But because bovine are not actually native species to this area, the Corps doesn't take that into their risk assessment. And there's a public health department that deals with disease. So disease is gonna be separate. Like, because first of all, there's no way, even with the best science, that you can tell that your cancer came from only TCE.
So I'm gonna interrupt you for a
'Cause
second.
there's a lot of other things in
Yeah.
your soil.
I'm gonna interrupt you for a second. So this is what I received on the meeting was January 14th in Logan. And on January 16th, I wrote to Scott Sawyer at the Corps and to Matt Graish at the DNR. And I said, good morning, can you please provide me with the total acres across the, can you please provide me with the total acres the TCE has spread outside of the Missile site, looking at the residential well map from the Army Corps? Also, do you know the approximate number of residences throughout the entire testing area? Total count, including but not limited to test wells. I also sent the email to Scott, but thought you may know as well. Thank you, Mary Jo. So I sent it to Scott and to Matt. This is a response I got from Matt. He copied Scott Sawyer. Maryland, I will attach a map I made this morning showing all the wells in the vicinity known to the DNR and publicly available on the area's GIS data server. There may potentially be another couple in existence that are newer than the data set, which is updated periodically. I do not know how many residences there are in the area, but I suspect that could be derived from the Beacon website. I did a rough estimate on the state geographic map server, and the total acres is in the range of 2,500 to 3,000 acres. Thanks. And then Scott Sawyer responded, thank you, that is exact, that was from me. Scott Sawyer responded, thanks, Matt, those are good references. So I received that on January 16th. So it is expanded outside the 289 acres, which we're all aware of, because that just encompasses Cottonwood Hills. And that's why everybody here that lives outside that area should have a voice in the RAB. Again, I can only go by the documentation I receive. And I do try to make sure I have everything factual and black and white. And those maps, I did not make these maps up. They were all provided to me by both the Corps and the DNR. So that's all I got.
So I have a question. If you have just, is there an amount of TCE in your water that's considered safe to drink?
In Iowa, it is less than 5. In Minnesota, it's less than 2.
Canada, it's less
In
than-
Canada, it's no TCE is.
However, any TCE consumed over
Any-
continuous periods of time is not acceptable.
Right.
It
So
creates,
that's my question.
as well as the VOC breakdown. So when TCE breaks
Yeah,
down,
we did too.
it creates VOCs. And those VOCs create symptoms, neurological symptoms, visual symptoms.
TCE is a VOC.
Okay. Parkinson's, cancers. So any
Neurological disorders.
consumption of any VOC is a problem.
Yeah. And so my understanding from the group of experts I've been working with is there is testing that could be provided by the federal government. And they test hair follicles and fingernail clippings to see how much TCE is in your system. The problem is, like Jessica said, how did you get the TCE? Well, you have a lot of TCE in your system and you live in the contamination site, logic would tell me that it is caused from the contamination. So that is why we've started documenting and understanding the patterns, which I did share with Scott Sawyer, and my understanding is the Corps just handles the remediation part. The public health department, and he referred me to the state public health is what he did regarding health issues.
And our
Okay.
public health should really be the ones that are helping advocate for us on the state and federal level, that's the thing.
So how long, I have lived in my house,
Been there 25, 30 years, 25 years at least, haven't you?
20, 22, something like that. You know, we drank it, we bathed, swam in it, everything. I'm an open book when it comes to my health. I have every symptom of the TCE. I had a brain tumor removed in June. My symptoms are coming back. And so like, I've had that system since they put them in.
Yeah.
How long does that, so if I was tested, what are the chances of it showing positive because we have that system now?
Right.
But who's to say that everything that's happening to me and my family members, because I'm not the only one in my family, including grandkids, who's to say that it's not from that?
And I wish I could answer you. I wish that I, was a doctor in that way. And I wish that we had better resources that were connected like that.
So I do have some resources.
But, what I would say, take matters into your own
Yeah.
hands.
The
We gotta
court-
start testing ourselves. We have to start helping each other. The Corps is gonna do what they get money to do.
The Corps does not do health issues.
Right, I
Okay.
understand that, I understand.
And so I have reached out to individuals, and so, I do have some advocates for our area regarding health.
And our public health
Okay.
department and the state health. And I spent a lot of time on the phone with the state, with some guy who hung up on me twice and said it was an accident. Come on. He's like, it happened again. I'm like, did it? But, it's a lot of states, and I think, and one that I've been looking a lot at that's done a lot of good is in Michigan, and getting their public health department and their state department to start doing more direct health tests so that we can actually start correlating. Because like I suggested to Mary Jo when I first came to her house and she started telling me about all of this sickness, I was like, we gotta start looking for patterns, start marking it on a map. Okay, this area is high, and once we can zoom out and start to see that, you have a little bit more to work with as far as getting funding. Probably not from the Corps, because they don't do that, but from other agencies, definitely from our local government.
So the Army Corps,
They can request
again,
money for that. The state,
yeah,
the university, there is all sorts of money to be doing these things. Our local government is not adopting it. They're supposed to be advocating for us.
Other than you, I feel like nobody gives a shit. I
Because-
watched that meeting, and Brian Reif, no offense, I kinda wanted to just,
Which meeting?
Yeah.
what was that, where he's like, well, let's just not do any wells out there, and I just don't think that's.
that was
a
the
big
meeting,
deal.
I think, on February 12th when I asked for, was that the meeting when I asked for them to sit down
Yeah, it's one
with
of
some
them
of
that
us?
you
Yeah.
posted, and I watched the
Yeah,
whole
I
thing,
watched that
and
one
I
too.
was like, he clearly doesn't understand.
You
No.
gotta also understand that it's financial and political at that point.
And I think they're
So-
scared. No one wants to be held accountable. Like a lot of the folks that I've talked to, it's not even that, like everyone knows. Anyone that lives here knows someone that's sick. Anyone that lives here I've talked to has some concern about the water. But I think people don't want to be held accountable. But it's like, we're not saying it's your fault.
No,
It's like now that we know better, we do better. But I think a lot of the local officials, I know even like with asbestos and stuff I've gone to bat for in other areas since I've been here, people that just maybe aren't qualified to be doing the type of tests that we do now and don't have the information, they're not using the most up-to-date information, and so they're signing off on all of these things, and people are moving in, and people are drinking and breathing, but they don't want us to come back and be like, well, it's your fault, you're fired. I feel like there's a lot of this like fear, like, but it's not my fault, it was passed on down to me, and it's like, that's cool, dude. I'm not saying
let's
it
do
is, but
something about it.
but you have to do something about it now.
Right.
There's children in here. You can't have open asbestos in these buildings. You know
Yeah.
that, right? Oh, well, as long as it's sealed. That's not a rule anymore. This is
Yeah.
2026.
So
It's
we'll
called cracks.
handle that
You
another
know?
day. So for the purposes of this meeting, everyone that has signed up, is it okay if I reach out to you directly? Okay. And I appreciate everybody coming. I appreciate Jessica and Rebecca's input. And like I said, some of your direct questions, I have a lot of information. And, I have quite a bit of information regarding taxes. Yes, which I've been working
So are they gonna lower the
And-
taxes?
I have been working diligently on, and so I am currently working with a state agency.
So
Because
the,
I'd like to see our.
the thing I would,
farm rollers.
I would also say, go along with your last statement there, is there is a property tax meeting next Thursday.
March 26th.
6th in Logan. I suggest everybody get there, because they're wanting to raise our levy up 4%.
Yeah.
Not quite 4, but close to it.
March 26th at
26,
9
yeah, I
a.m.
text you.
March 26th at 9 a.m.
So,
at the courthouse.
I don't know about y'all, but my valuations have more than went up 4 times in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
The county should be awash in money.
It's bad,
And for them to say that they don't have enough money for this
yeah.
and to keep
So,
everything afloat,
I will
yeah,
tell
everybody should
you
go to this.
That, I have seen reduced taxes to some individuals in the contamination area that have, but there is a statement that the county assessor put out that says that they don't, I've read it to you guys before, the statement regarding what the assessors put out. So, I'll send that information to the people that have signed up. Ron, I know how to get a hold of you through Jackson, and, we will get this RAB board
When you
going.
go to protest your tax statement, it takes you longer to walk into the building than you get for a hearing, and then
Yep.
they don't listen to you anyway.
That's
And I've protested my taxes twice in the 35 years I've lived up here, and I got exactly nothing
No.
out of it.
And they'll give you some bull crap.
Yeah,
Yeah, you'll wanna talk to me,
yeah. The
because
last
like
time
I said,
got it was just your turn.
I'm going the extra mile with the
Yeah.
taxes too.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know if I'll prevail, but I am going the extra mile with the taxes.
Uh-huh.
335th.
So, I
Something's
will
gotta
see
be
what
done there.
happens. No.
It's crazy.
No, we are, we're on
Thank you.
335th.
Well, and-
Warren is